Thomas, 33, felt the familiar ache in his lower back as he stacked another crate of fresh produce onto the market stall. The morning mist still clung to the cobblestones of Market Square, and the scent of damp earth mixed with baking bread from Mrs. Henderson's bakery. Small-town England was a place woven from quiet routines and familiar faces. It was home, always had been. My father, bless his soul, used to say it was the kind of place where you knew every crack in the pavement and every story in every house. I worked as a general handyman, fixing leaky taps, mending fences, painting front doors that had seen too many winters. It was honest work, kept me busy, kept me connected to the rhythm of the town. My hands were rough, my nails often stained with paint or grease, but I liked the feeling of solving a problem, making something right again. My dream, if you could call it that, was a simple one: to keep the spirit of this town alive, the one my father loved so much. He had passed away just last year unexpectedly, and a part of me felt lost, like a tool without its proper box. He was a man of strong opinions and even stronger heart, always advocating for the town, especially the local primary school. He believed it was the heart of our community, where the future was shaped, where children learned not just lessons, but kindness. But lately, the quiet struggles of small town were growing louder. Shops were closing, young families were moving away for better opportunities, and the old buildings, once proud, seemed to slouch a little more each day. The biggest worry, the one that sat heavy in my chest like a forgotten stone, was the news about our beloved St. Jude's primary school. The town council, swayed by a powerful property developer, had announced plans to demolish it. They wanted to build new, modern flats in its place, promising progress and revenue. I heard the murmurs in the market, the sighs in the pub. Nobody wanted it, not really, but everyone felt helpless. "It's a done deal, Thomas," old Mr. Peterson would say, shaking his head. "They've made up their minds." My internal nemesis, the doubt, began to whisper in my ear. What good can one person do against such power? Your father would have known what to say, what to do, but you're just a handyman. You don't have the words, the influence. The fear of letting down my father's memory, of watching his beloved school crumble, gnawed at me. I'd walk past St. Jude's in the evenings, its old brick walls glowing orange in the setting sun, imagining the laughter of children replaced by the roar of bulldozers. The thought was unbearable, a knot tightening in my stomach. I knew deep down I had to try. Even if I was just one man, I had to try to stop it. The fight began subtly, then grew into a consuming fire within me. I started by talking to everyone I knew, trying to drum up support. I went to the pub, the local tea shop, the post office. I spoke to the parents whose children attended St. Jude's, to the elderly residents who remembered attending it themselves, to the shopkeepers who relied on the foot traffic it brought. "The school isn't just a building," I'd explain, my voice often hoarse from passion. "It's where our kids learn, where they make their first friends, where they dream. It's the pulse of our community." I drafted a petition, clumsily typed out on my old computer, and carried it everywhere. My hands, usually busy with repairs, were now busy collecting signatures, explaining the injustice. I spent my evenings attending increasingly frustrating town council meetings. The councilors, mostly older gentlemen in neat suits, would listen politely sometimes, but their eyes held a familiar dismissiveness. They spoke of progress, economic growth, unavoidable realities. My words, plain and heartfelt, seemed to bounce off their polished arguments like pebbles against a stone wall. Each meeting left me feeling smaller, more insignificant. "We appreciate your passion, Mr. Davies," the head counselor, Mr. Albright, would say with a tight smile. "But the decision has been made." Setback after setback began to chip away at my resolve. The number of signatures on my petition grew, but it felt like a drop in the ocean. A local newspaper ran a small article about my efforts, but it was buried deep inside, far from the front-page news about the developer's grand plans. People I thought would stand with me started to waver. "It's no use, Thomas," a neighbor told me, sighing. "They'll do what they want." My work suffered. I missed a few appointments, my mind always on the school. My small savings, usually put aside for a new tool or an unexpected repair, started to dwindle as I printed flyers and paid for bus fare to attend meetings in the neighboring larger town where the developer's office was located. I felt like I was shouting into a void, my voice swallowed by the indifference and the sheer weight of bureaucracy. The internal nemesis, doubt, returned with a vengeance. "You're failing, Thomas, just like you always feared. Your father would be ashamed. You're not strong enough, not clever enough to fight this battle." Then came the lowest point. The council called an emergency meeting, not to reconsider, but to confirm the demolition date. It was set for the end of the next month. The developer had pushed for an expedited schedule, claiming delays were costing them too much. I sat in the packed council chambers, listening to the finality in Mr. Albright's voice, feeling a cold dread spread through me. They had already arranged for a temporary mobile classroom solution for the children just to appease the public. It was a token gesture, a flimsy bandage over a gaping wound. I looked around at the faces in the room. Many were resigned, some angry, but all seemed defeated. I stood up, my legs trembling, and tried to speak, but the words caught in my throat. My voice was just a whisper. Mr. Albright simply looked at me, a pitying expression in his eyes, and adjourned the meeting. Walking home that evening, the streetlights seemed dimmer, the familiar houses colder. I stopped outside St. Jude's, its playground swings creaking faintly in the breeze. The windows, usually filled with colorful drawings, were dark. I slumped onto a nearby bench, feeling the rough wood beneath my hands, and for the first time, tears welled in my eyes. It was over. I had tried, but I had failed. My father's school, his legacy, my childhood memories, all of it would be gone. The internal nemesis screamed now, "You are utterly useless. Give up, Thomas, there's no point." I felt a profound sense of loneliness, a despair so deep it physically hurt. I wanted to just curl up and disappear. The next morning, a Saturday, dawned gray and bleak, mirroring the emptiness in my heart. I couldn't bring myself to do any work. Instead, I found myself drawn to my father's old workshop in the back garden. It was a place he loved, filled with the scent of wood shavings and engine oil, a sanctuary of creation. I hadn't properly sorted through it since he passed, not really. It felt too personal, too painful. But now, with nothing left to fight for, a strange compulsion led me there. Perhaps I thought I could just clean up, maybe find some distraction. I dusted off old tools, sorted through tins of rusty screws, and carefully stacked worn-out gardening books. My fingers brushed against a small, unmarked wooden box tucked away on a high shelf, half hidden by a stack of old newspapers. It was plain, made from dark, unassuming wood. I remembered seeing it on his workbench when I was a boy, but he had always kept it locked, a small, private treasure. Now it was slightly ajar. My heart gave a little flutter, a faint spark in the overwhelming gloom. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a single, folded letter. It was addressed to the future, in my father's unmistakable, elegant handwriting. My hands trembled as I carefully unfolded the brittle paper. The date at the top was nearly 30 years ago. I sat down on his old stool, the silence of the workshop broken only by the rustle of the paper and the frantic beating of my own heart. I began to read. It wasn't a personal letter to me, not exactly. It was a passionate, heartfelt plea, penned by my father, addressed to anyone who might consider taking away a cornerstone of our community. He wrote about St. Jude's primary school, not just as bricks and mortar, but as a crucible of dreams, a place where he had learned to read and write, where my mother had taught, where I myself had taken my first wobbly steps into the world of knowledge. He spoke of the importance of roots, of providing children with a solid foundation, not just for their education, but for their sense of belonging, their identity within small town. He detailed how the school had survived wars and economic downturns, always adapting, always nurturing. His words were poetic, powerful, full of a conviction I had forgotten he possessed to such a degree. He even mentioned specific anecdotes, like how the school had been the first in the region to offer a free hot meal program during a lean year, something that had saved countless families. He ended with a simple yet profound statement. To demolish St. Jude's is not just to destroy a building. It is to sever the thread that weaves our past, present, and future together. It is to deny our children their heritage and their hope. As I finished reading, a wave of emotion, not despair, but a surge of fierce, protective love washed over me. This wasn't just my father's letter, it was his voice speaking to me across time, giving me strength when I had none. It was the unexpected kindness, a guiding hand from the past. My internal nemesis, the doubt, suddenly seemed small, insignificant. This is why I must fight, I thought. This is what he fought for, even when I didn't know it. I knew what I had to do. The developer had planned a groundbreaking ceremony for the demolition on Monday morning, a cynical public relations stunt. Monday morning arrived, brisk and sunny, a stark contrast to my anxious heart. A small crowd had gathered outside St. Jude's, mostly reporters and curious onlookers, along with Mr. Albright and a few other counselors, all standing next to a shiny new bulldozer. The developer, a sleek man in an expensive suit, was giving a speech about modernization and progress. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands, clutching my father's letter, felt steady. I pushed my way through the small crowd, my voice, surprisingly loud, cutting through the developer's words. "Excuse me," I shouted, heads turned. Mr. Albright looked annoyed. The developer paused, irritated. "I have something to say," I continued, stepping forward, finding a courage I didn't know I possessed. "Something from someone who truly understood this town." I held up the letter. This was written by my father, Arthur Davies, a man who loved this school and this community more than anything. I began to read, my voice trembling at first. then growing stronger with each word, echoing my father's passion across the quiet morning air. I read his arguments, his anecdotes, his fervent belief in the school's enduring spirit. I read the part about the hot meal program, and I saw a few older faces in the crowd nod, remembering. I read his powerful conclusion about severing the threads of past, present, and future. When I finished, the silence was deafening. No one clapped, but no one spoke either. They just stood there, absorbing the words. Then an elderly woman stepped forward, her eyes bright with tears. It was Mrs. Gable, a former teacher at St. Jude's, now retired. "Arthur was right," she said, her voice clear and firm. "He always was. That school saved lives, Mr. Albright. It nurtured generations. You cannot tear down our history, our heart." Her words broke the spell. Other voices joined in, parents, grandparents, former students, all echoing Mrs. Gable's sentiment. The reporters, sensing a real story, started snapping photos and asking questions. Mr. Albright, his face pale, exchanged hurried whispers with the developer. The developer, clearly uncomfortable with the unexpected public outcry, muttered something about needing to reevaluate. The demolition was put on hold, at least for now. It was a small victory, but it felt like the world had shifted on its axis. The resolution wasn't instant, but that day was the turning point. The story of my father's letter and the community's response spread like wildfire. The local paper, this time, put it on the front page. People who had been resigned found their voices. Donations started pouring in, not just for the school, but for a fund to challenge the developer legally. A retired lawyer in town, a former student of St. Jude's, offered his services pro bono. The town council, facing immense public pressure and the threat of legal action, eventually had to back down. St. Jude's primary school was saved. My new normal was profoundly different. I was no longer just Thomas the handyman. I was Thomas, the man who helped save St. Jude's. The internal nemesis of doubt was replaced by a quiet confidence. I still fixed taps and mended fences, but I also became deeply involved in the school's revitalization committee. We started a community garden in the old, unused patch behind the school, and I taught the children how to build birdhouses. I volunteered to maintain the school grounds, my hands busy with a new kind of purpose. I even started a small local history project with the older students, encouraging them to interview their grandparents about the town, just as my father had always encouraged connection. The kindness of that unexpected letter, that whisper from the past, had not only saved a school but had also rekindled the flame of community spirit that I feared was dying. Sometimes, when I walk past St. Jude's and hear the joyous sounds of children playing, I imagine my father smiling. He wouldn't have wanted a monument just for the school to thrive, and thrive it did. A year later, on the anniversary of the day we saved the school, we unveiled a small plaque by the main entrance. It simply read, "St. Jude's Primary School, saved by the enduring spirit of its community and the timeless words of Arthur Davies." And there was a small twist of fate, a reminder that things truly do get better. During one of my handyman jobs, I met a lovely woman named Sarah, a new teacher at St. Jude's. She had moved to small town because she'd heard the story of how the community had fought to save its school, and she wanted to be a part of a place with such heart. We often walked past the school in the evenings, hand in hand, listening to the quiet hum of the building, knowing that sometimes all it takes is one voice, echoing through time, to remind us of the power of hope and the unbreakable threads that tie us all together. My father's letter didn't just save a building. It built a future for the town and for me.